Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 12 of the African Do podcast. Today, we're very, very privileged to have a fabulous guest, I dare say so myself, Miss Rose Kimotho, who has a fabulous story to tell us, and a fabulous story that I've been looking to hear for a while. And I look forward to it. Rose, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Leonard, for having me.
Yeah, so... You don't need an introduction in a Kenyan context because you're a very, I'd say, visible personality. But maybe let's go back to the beginning of your career, yeah? And I was reading, like I was telling you recently, I was reading Roger Stedman's biography, and I found out that his initial interaction with you was as a marketer. So maybe we can start there, and you can tell us a bit about your life as a brand marketer and how that now threw you into this whole advertising media space.
Well, thank you, Leonard, again for having me. But my life goes before I became a marketer. Mm-hmm. I started life as a journalist.
Okay.
My previous life.
Wow.
I started off as a journalist.
Okay.
I did journalism at the School of Journalism at the University of Nairobi. Mm-hmm. And I remember the director calling us in before we did our final exams and saying that Hilary Ngweno, who then was the big name. Hillary. Weekly Review.
Yes.
And then he launched Nairobi Times.
Yes.
Hillary asked to be given 2 of the top students. Mm-hmm. So the director called us and said, I've recommended you. And his name is Peter Karithi. Now he's a professor, I think, at the University of Pennsylvania or somewhere.
Yeah.
And so we were like, what, the guru? Hilary Ngweno?
We're going to
work there. So I remember going, he was just off Moi Avenue, mm-hmm. the offices there. Mm-hmm. And so we got jobs before we actually finished our exams. He said, as soon as you finish your final exams, come. So I got my first job there, started writing. I started working and writing. Peter was put in Weekly Review and I was in Nairobi Times. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the first time I experienced when they say discrimination as a woman. Mm-hmm. Because as we went in, Peter was put straight into writing political stories. And all the hard stories.
Yes.
And I had to do all the soft stories.
Leisure,
museum, entertainment, Dr. Bernardo's children's home, that type of writing.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, this is a real man's world. Mm-hmm. Even the newsroom, the smoke, everybody was smoking, and typewriters. It was those days, 1978.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So that's how I started life. And then on one of my assignments, I was doing another soft story about palm oil. Mm-hmm. I came across, I was assigned to interview somebody in Unilever, and they referred me to their agency, which is Ogilvy and Mather.
Okay.
And then I met a gentleman there who was in charge of the Unilever account. His name was Jerry Shah, mm-hmm. the account director. And where I turned up at Ogilvy and Mather, they were into Mining House at that time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even know advertising agencies existed. I didn't know what they did.
Yeah.
My knowledge of advertising was posters.
You saw them. You saw the posters in the papers. And that was it. And that was it.
So none of this strategizing, branding, creating brands, copywriting. So to cut a long story short, we went for lunch with him and other directors. And during lunch, they offered me a job. And I said, to do what? They said, to write copy. I said, what do you write copy for? Then they explained to me about. And I think what fascinated me is what he explained over lunch, because I had no clue what they did. Mm-hmm. How they take a brand, they position it, you need to write the copy, you need to identify the target group, mm-hmm. And I thought, I liked more the offices. It was all very posh.
It was swanky. It was not like a journalist.
It wasn't like the newsroom with full of smoke.
Yeah.
I think that's what actually made my decision flipped, and I joined. Okay. So that's 1980. I started my career.
Okay.
Yes.
So you did like 2 years in Nairobi Times?
A very short time. But before that, I'd worked during the holidays at the Standard newspaper. I'd worked at the Standard newsroom. And then I joined Ogilvy and Mather and never looked back.
And so you transitioned into
advertising. And then we worked at, of course, the major clients, East Africa Industries at that time, Unilever, the big names.
Yes.
And so I had to learn. I moved from copywriting into the client service side. And eventually moved on to McCann Erickson, was general manager. I joined the board of McCann. And from McCann Erickson, I started Regional Reach. So I was in advertising for 12 years. Yeah.
So regional reach is an interesting story. So you trained as a journalist, went into advertising, and then you go into regional reach. And I remember reading about regional reach, and I remember I found it to be quite an innovative way to communicate to the masses. Maybe you can tell us a bit about what regional reach was in its original state. And you used to record stuff and show it in social halls. Or what inspired that, or what pushed you to go down that route?
Well, you see, people today can't imagine Kenya at a time where there wasn't free media.
Yes.
You see, in those days, in the 70s and 80s, the only main station was Kenya Broadcasting, KBC,
yeah.
And that was it as a TV. And general service, English service, and then vernacular stations that came on 2 hours each language.
Yes.
The first time we had a private radio station or TV station was KTN. And KTN was just limited to Nairobi.
Yes.
So outside Nairobi, your choice was KBC. Then soon after, Capital FM came on.
Yes.
And that was it. That was the choice.
For a while,
So as we worked for advertisers like Unilever, at the time, 70% of Kenya's population was rural-based and 30% urban-based.
Yes.
So there was always a challenge. How do you reach the rural consumer? Because apart from KBC and radio, how do you talk to them? You're selling Kimbo or Cowboy or the brands, whatever you are selling. You need to reach, or more, detergent. How do you reach the mama in the rural areas or the man? Again, electricity was only limited to the main roads.
True.
So the trading centers had electricity. Outside the trading centers, no electricity.
Yeah.
So even people who could afford TVs and therefore have access to KBC didn't have electricity unless you had a generator.
Yeah.
So there was always a challenge. When they came to meetings, they said, how do we reach this consumer? So I remember thinking, these are the people, they have some money, they are big, they are the potential, they are the future. How do you reach them? Then I remember I went for a meeting in South Africa.
Yeah.
I think it was sometime in 1991, before Mandela.
Before Mandela, yeah.
And they had to make really special arrangements. You got your visa done on a different piece of paper because the passport said all countries except South Africa.
Except South Africa, yeah.
And even there, they made arrangements for us to go to Soweto because I really wanted to go to Soweto. And when I went to Soweto, they had the same kind of challenge. They have this huge African population living in Soweto and other townships. The toothpaste manufacturers, Colgate and others, had realized that this is a potential market. The white population, which at that time I think was 4 million versus whatever the African population.
Yeah.
The potential population is the black people, but how do you reach them?
Yes.
They're in Soweto. They don't have electricity. The same challenges as our rural. So somebody in South Africa had come up with the idea of putting up TVs and at Dukas, the equivalent of Dukas, because they are very urbanized in South Africa. So the reverse, 70% urban and 30% rural. He'd put up these TVs where people would sit outside and watch programming, which was pre-recorded. And then he had placed advertising in between for Colgate and for other brands. And so these people at Soweto would go to the shops and watch this. And I thought, this is a brilliant idea. This is what we need in Kenya. It's a solution for our rural.
So it's a TV with a VCR?
It's a one unit, but it's a VCR at the bottom.
Yes.
You pre-record. It's like cable TV, African style.
Yes.
You pre-record.
A local version
of cable TV. You pre-record the tapes.
Yes.
You slot in advertising in between because somebody has to pay for the cost.
And you pre-record what?
You pre-record.
So what's the content?
When we came back here, we thought we have to find content that is applicable and relevant to the people. And we decided those were the times where we had one party.
Yes.
Very politically sensitive.
Yes.
So the one thing we knew is you had to stay out of politics.
Okay.
I'm a Kikuyu, and at that time the Kikuyus were not the flavor of the month.
They were not the flavor, yeah.
So
the mountain was quiet.
Yeah, the Mrima was quiet.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure I steer away from politics because immediately I came up with a concept. The suspicion was this is opposition. These are Kikuyus who want starting. So we decided we were going to have educational content, agricultural-based content. We are going to show programs from Ministry of Agriculture because they produced a lot of, how do you set up zero farming, zero grazing for the cattle, cottage industries, how you can convert. So there's a lot of programming like that's available. And we'd buy all content from KBC and Ministry of Agriculture. So that already gives you a tick.
Yeah.
Entertainment programming was Mama Kawayai,
Vioja
Vioja
Mahakamani.
Mahakamani.
Yes.
Then World Cup.
Yes.
The first time we really got a boost is when World Cup was aired by KBC.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, rural audiences didn't have access to it because they didn't have TVs in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
So we made a deal with KBC. And we said, we'll buy that programming. They charged us a fee,
Mm-hmm.
put it on our tapes, and show it on our TVs.
Later
So
on.
for the first time, rural audiences could watch World Cup.
Wow.
A day after, 2 days after, who cares?
But they got to watch the game.
They got to watch it. And schools then we got National Geographic tapes. So we'd get calls from schools who would organize for their children, school children, during the day for us to play these National Geographic tapes, because this is the first time kids were seeing whales and seals and all this stuff that they learned in school.
Mm.
And you know how the quality of National Geographic tapes. So we got into a contract of that. And so we'd show that. So it was very educational. Now, what we learned is to get permission to launch this was the major hurdle.
Okay.
We started off with, we had a minister who is, my sister was married to a minister who was in the right camp.
Yes.
So he said, you have to go through the PC. Those were the days when you had the provincial commissioners.
Yes.
So we started the journey of going to see, in the Eastern Province, the PC. Well, I wanted to start outside Central Province.
Okay.
Again,
so that,
for obvious
reasons, yeah.
So we went to see the PC, who was based in Embu. From the PC, you then got to see the DC. We sent you to the DC.
Mm-hmm.
Then you presented your whole case again. Of course, by this time, I'm sure they've got people checking on whether you've got connected to. Then from the DC, then you go and see several DOs, because that's when I learned how the administration works.
True, yeah.
Then from the DOs, you get to the chiefs.
Yeah.
Right down to the trading center. Then the assistant chief. That's when people don't realize how powerful government is and the network of government.
True. Because
I remember the first time we went to see the PC and the piece and the caliber of PC, by the way, top.
Yes.
The PCs, because I met PCs from all over the country.
Yes.
Better brains than any brain in the private sector. I tell you, these guys are
sharp guys.
Sharp guys.
Yeah.
PCs and DCs, top quality. Because I remember being thrown and they'll just listen to you, all very reasonable. You present your case, then send you to by the time you got to the DC, they already knew everything about you. Then you present again. I remember in Nyeri, the DC called all the DOs. And by the time they arrived, they knew about you. Then you went to the DOs. By the time you go to the DOs, they know everything. So the way the information filters down, that's what I think. People think, we used to hear Mkono, the hand of the government is long or something.
Yes.
It really is. It filters all the way down.
All the way to the ground, yeah.
So by the time we got the ticks from the DC, the DO, the chiefs would be waiting for us when we went to the little trading centers and the assistant chiefs, because we had to get owners of buildings to give us permission to put up the TVs, the televideos.
Yes.
And the deal was, you allow us to use your premises, we use your electricity, but after 2 years, the TV becomes yours. That was the incentive.
Okay.
So they looked after the TVs. And then the communities looked after the TVs. Because if you break it, you have nothing to watch. So in the evenings, they'd come and watch it. And you'd be amazed with all the TVs. And we had them all over. We launched in Kisumu, Kisii. That's when I saw the country.
Yes.
Uasin Gishu. I've been all over Kenya because we went into all the little towns. In all of them, we only got in 2 cases where somebody stole the TV, a thief, a criminal, but they were recovered.
Wow.
Because the community tells, and then the administration
This must have been hundreds of TVs.
It was, there were hundreds. And we started in Meru, then Nyeri district, then Murang'a, then we went to Nakuru, then we went to Vihiga, Kakamega, Kisii, Kisumu, I think, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, that time was the MP for Reru. We actually launched in his village, Reru village, So we've been all over the country. I loved it.
And that must have been brilliant, because now, you've now got the TVs in place. But maybe tell us a bit about the journey of creating the content and distributing the content, because you have to get it all around the country. So how are you people moving around or how are you doing that?
All right. So what we did is actually started in my house.
Okay.
And we bought these video copying machines that we'd stack up in one room, one of the rooms in my house. I stacked up these video machines. It was that I think young people have no clue how we did things in those days. So there were physical cassettes, the VHS cassettes, and you'd stack up so you'd make 10 copies at a time. And I had a few young people who'd sit there all day with the programming, reproducing, copying the cassettes. Then in each district, we employed young people and bought them motorbikes long before borders.
Wow.
Yes. I have these pictures of the motorbikes we bought, and we fitted them with a carrier at the back.
Yes.
So each area had a supervisor who had a border bike. So he would collect, and we had a center. So Nairobi served Central. Then we had in Kisumu, we served Western.
Yes.
And Kisumu area.
Yes.
And Nakuru.
Okay.
So we'd send this over, and then they would distribute them with a motorbike, collect the old tapes, and give them the new tapes, and then reuse these tapes for a few times. So after a while, the quality became bad. Then we changed them.
3 or 4.
So we were the biggest consumer of VHS tapes. Yes, in those days. Yes.
So you used to import them or buy them locally?
We used to buy them locally.
Yeah.
We had a supplier who gave them to us.
Yeah.
But at a discount, of course.
Of course, because you're bulk consumer.
Bulk consumer. Yeah. And that was a major cost. That and the motorbikes, the investment, because you have to get the tapes distributed and then returned. So every week, we change them on a weekly basis.
And this is a new medium. So how do you then take, we've now understood the back end, how you're distributing, how you're showing it to the people. But now what are you telling the advertisers?
Okay.
And
Now I'd spent by that time, 12 years in advertising. So
yes,
I knew
of course, you knew the lingo. Yeah.
So I knew, so I went to advertisers and said, this is the answer to the problem we've had all these years. I worked, my first advertisers were Unilever.
Yes.
Because that's their target market. Cadbury's.
Yes.
Remember at our launch in Meru, the very first launch we had, I invited advertisers to the launches. They came ever ready when we launched in Nakuru. The ever ready general managing director was there. So they could see for themselves. I took them round. I got advertising agencies. Many of them are still in business today.
Yes.
And drove them round with me at night for them to witness.
To see the people watching.
So the key thing is marketing ourselves. We took pictures. We had continuous trips with clients. We took clients to Western Kenya. We took them to Vihiga, to Nyeri. We took agencies for them to witness the impact. And of course, they had their own salespeople on the ground who would report back to them and take pictures and say this works. So we worked mainly through the agencies, the major agencies, whether this is McCann and Ogilvy and Mather and, Scanner and other agencies. And so we got advertising. It was the first time I saw advertising search you out, if you know what I mean, because they loved it. They just loved the fact that it's a new medium.
Yes.
And it's fulfilling a need.
Yes.
Then, of course, in 1998, 99, the airways were freed.
Yes, were open. Yes.
So the concept now, media could then grow and go to the rural areas.
Yes.
But until then,
there
wasn't anything.
So what was its life? What was its core life, I would say, when it had that kind of impact?
From 1994 to about 1999, until we launched Kameme.
Okay. So 5 years, about 5 years. But also 5 years of a lot of learning.
A lot of learning.
Yeah.
A lot of understanding the marketplace.
Yeah.
A lot of, for me personally, seeing my own country. Because I went to places where villages down, whether it's in Wasingishu, in Vihiga. I know Kenya.
Yes.
People mentioned a town, and I think we used to have
a
TV
there.
there.
Yeah, we used to have a TV there.
Because each time you went on the ground, you had to negotiate with the owners of the building. For each instance, every meeting was a new negotiation. And then you learned about in the time when I'd had to travel with my brother David.
Yes.
And when I arrived, especially in Central Province, I didn't have the impact, or Meru, as a woman.
Yes.
So he would front for me.
Wow.
We would arrive and they would ignore me and negotiate with David because these are Wazirs and they're men.
Yes.
And they were not going to start negotiating with this woman. Yeah. So we'd be with David, and David would be the managing director.
Oh, wow.
Imagine. And he's
You've employed your brother, but...
So I'd have to take the back seat. Maybe he's secretary. I don't know what they thought I was.
Yeah.
But that's how it worked. So we had to know the dynamics and the culture. So I couldn't walk in there as the owner. David was and he'd get all the, so long as I got my contract signed.
As long as you got the check.
So I didn't care.
But man, I don't think many people realize how big the strides are we have made.
don't.
You know, and even women in the workplace. I think this will be a very interesting thing for them to hear.
And they need to adjust also and to understand cultural context and norms.
True.
If I walk in there with my women's lib and feminist, I'm this, you're not going to
probably
get anywhere.
You didn't have made it through the door.
Yeah, through the door.
Yeah.
So I do negotiations with the PCs, that level. Fine.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they were very encouraging. They thought this is a novel idea. We need to educate the public. Your content is educational. So at that level, it's fine. DC level, it's fine. When you get to the chiefs, I'd front my brother.
But I also see a lot of, so far, what you've told us, I see a lot of you reacting to local context. In the sense that first, you know that I can't be political. And I'm sure you must have had your personal political views, but you're like, no, in order to start, I have to play where I can play. Otherwise, if you're not in the game, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're not playing any game.
Yeah.
And then of course you come to the context of understanding that in some of these areas you're dealing with old men who might not be so open. So you do have quite a bit of local context in how you do things. Yeah. And local context for us on this podcast is a big thing because I think it's the least valued asset we have as people. So 1999, airwaves open. I think that's when Capital FM and them start to come out. We were really excited. Those are those days. I'd finished high school around when you're starting regional reach. I'd finished high school and I was now in the work in uni and. Seeing the opening of the airwaves for us was really exciting. Even KTN in itself,
I know.
It was quite exciting. So, Kameme FM, and I'll start Kameme FM from. Let's discuss a bit about licensing, because I remember that radio licenses or the licensing of the airwaves was quite even when they said they had liberalized it. It was like. The politically connected had been given, here's one license for you and one license for you, and then now you had to. So how was your journey on that front?
Well, I look back and I say, first I give thanks to the Almighty because some of these things that happened in my life, I really have other than His grace.
Yes.
But it was the time I was in Marketing Society of Kenya.
Okay.
And I was the chairman of the Marketing Society from 1997, 98, 99, such a long time ago now.
Yes.
And we discussed the need to market Kenya. Remember, Kenya was under a lot of flack. And when you look around, and this is still the case today, we have so much to offer.
Yes.
But we don't position ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
You are in the...
I know exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
And the people who are tasked with coming up with a marketing strategy for the country either seem unable or don't care, or they just think very short term, or they have no idea what marketing is.
Yes.
So it was a time when New York was running that campaign, I Love New York.
Yes.
Remember, I love
with a heart, NY.
Yeah.
I heart NY,
and that's a city, and how it turned itself around,
Yes.
I think Bloomberg was the mayor then.
Mayor Bloomberg. Yeah,
and he started off with little things. The police would find people for little crimes, like dropping paper. So you check the little things, and the big things take care of themselves.
Yes.
And he repositioned New York. Then there was a campaign for Spain, España.
Yes.
Remember, it was as a destination.
Yes.
And these countries earn huge amounts of money from. Other countries position themselves, for their cultural experience. Now look at Kenya, what we have.
Yes. We have so much diversity to offer.
So much diversity. But the people tasked with seeing that either are blind or it's beyond explanation.
Yes. Yeah.
So we thought as patriots, let's come up with a campaign, Marketing Kenya campaign, and position the country as a brand, because we are good at selling brands. Let us sell Kenya, and there's so much, position it first, identify who our targets are, and have this conference. So we came up with the Marketing Kenya conference in 1998.
Okay. This is under the auspices of Marketing Society of Kenya, where you were the chair.
Where I was the chair.
Yeah.
And I remember for the first time in this country, we had the conference opened by the president. It was President Moi. President Moi.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it was closed by the vice president, who was Professor Saitoti.
Okay.
So you could see the people at the very top were intrigued, at least, to
What you're saying,
what
yeah.
we're saying. And
yeah.
I remember giving a speech when and Joe Nyaga was a minister for
information and broadcasting. Yes, yeah.
And these are people who Joe understood what we are talking about because he was well troubled.
Yes.
So we did have a caliber of people who understood. And I think Kaguthi was in the Ministry of Internal Security or something.
Yes.
And I think that's how we even managed to get the president to come, because we had to go to the Ministry of, because I had no clue how to get a president.
Case. Yeah.
So through Kaguthi and Hezekiah, those people
Hezekiah Oyugi, yeah.
So we had to go to the Ministry of Internal Security,
yeah.
who then channeled. I mean, there's a way these things are done.
Yes.
Then it gets to State House, and finally you get a confirmation the president is coming. But those people understood what we are talking,
you were saying, yeah,
and the potential for this country. So the president comes, and in his speech, he referred to me as the gracious lady. It's the biggest compliment I've ever.
Oh, wow.
Yes, after my speech, imagine, I've never felt. Rogers mentions it in his book.
He does, yeah.
That is the same day he appointed the Dream Team.
Yes,
after the conference,
headed by Liki and Martin Odoro Otieno and Naikuni, and yeah.
So Kenya we are repositioning, becoming a new country. And the pressure had come from the West about you can't reposition without freeing the airwaves.
True.
So I remember getting everybody, it was all over that we are going to put in your application. So I remember putting in my application to Joe Nyaga's office, Minister of Broadcasting, saying we want to start a radio station. And my credentials are regional reach.
Yes, this is what I've done.
I need to reach rural people.
Yes.
But now, instead of taking tapes on a motorbike, I can do it through the airwaves.
Okay.
So it makes sense.
Okay.
And I already had a record. You can talk to all the PCs in the country, the DCs. So they had stuff on me. They knew what I can do.
Yes.
And I'm non-political. Of course, that time I suffered. The Kikuyus thought I was a sellout.
Yes.
Because they thought...
Yeah, she must be. How is she getting this? How is she getting access?
This other side thought she's a Kikuyu anyway. There's nothing like a good Kikuyu.
Yes.
So you lose out.
Yeah.
Both sides.
You're in the middle.
You're in the middle, and you don't have friends at the side. But we persisted because we knew our goal. So that, I think, helped. The fact that we had done Marketing Society of Kenya, I'd had the regional reach.
Yes.
My content was there.
Yes.
And what I wanted was to do more of regional reach, but now on air.
Yes.
So we applied for a radio and a TV license.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to Joe Nyaga's office and him saying, we have to talk to NIS, Brigadier Boynet or something.
Boynet, yes.
Yeah.
Intelligence service.
We have to get you cleared and all that. I said, fine. I mean, I'm sure I've been checked in and out.
Yeah.
And then getting the news that we have been allocated both radio and TV.
They gave you both?
Both.
Wow.
The other people who got the allocation were, I think, Paul, what's his name? Radio Africa.
Okay.
Paul,
yes.
Kwako. Patrick Kwako.
Yeah.
Got to radio and TV.
Yes.
Citizen, Masharia.
Yes.
Radio and TV. Nation, of course.
Yes.
Radio and TV. And of course, Standard, who already...
Okay. Quasi in,
So, of course, these are guys with deep pockets.
Yes.
So, as soon as they got their licenses, bang, they launched.
They go out.
They got out. So Nation launched, remember, Nation Radio and Nation FM,
TV, yes.
Nation FM and whatever.
Yes.
Then Citizen launched, TV and radio, and everybody just launched. We didn't have...
You didn't have the money?
We didn't have the money. We didn't have the deep pockets. So we looked at the market and said, all the niches have been taken.
Yes.
Kiswahili's been taken by Citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Nation has taken English.
Capital's already there.
Top-end English.
Top-end, yeah.
So what is left? And the one thing I know from my marketing background is that you must, first of all, know your market.
Yes.
Identify the niches.
Mm-hmm.
Do something different. You have to fulfill a need.
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, what need are you for? A lot of people just launch because somebody, you open a pharmacy because somebody has opened a pharmacy.
Yes.
Or a matatu
or
because
an
somebody...
M-Pesa store next to the other five.
The other five,
yeah.
exactly. Which is how people do business. Instead of finding out what is it people need.
Yes.
So I remember looking at this whole media scene and saying, well, forget Swahili, forget English, forget all this. What is it that people need? Now, I remember... Every time I went into a Kikuyu's car, because remember Kikuyus had been suppressed for years.
Yes.
Everybody loved Kikuyu music.
Yes.
They loved, my mother played, all those Kikuyu musicians. She had those records. Mm-hmm. People had cassettes. They were giving Gifia cassettes.
Yes.
Comedians.
Yes.
So I said, hey, there's a market. The fact that people play
are consuming them.
it,
Yes.
but they're ashamed of it. Because
Yes.
you'd enter somebody's Mercedes
Yeah.
and they have got a Kikuyu
Tape.
cassette.
Stop it.
They stop it and put on Capital FM.
Yes, because
being vernacular
I'm too
is
cool.
I'm too cool. I'm a Capital, but
I'm enjoying it.
I'm enjoying
on
it.
my
I love
own.
it,
Yeah.
but there's something I'm embarrassed about. So
Yes.
why not make it okay?
Yes.
Why not launch that, Githingithia, but the product values of Capital?
Yes.
Let
yes.
it sound like Capital.
Let it sound
Give
cool.
them dignity, cool.
Yeah. Well branded.
With the same quality, the caliber.
Yes.
Reclaim their dignity, their pride.
Excellent.
Because what you're selling is not a radio station.
Mm-hmm.
You're selling dignity and pride in who I am.
Yes.
You're selling identity.
Yes.
And the rest of it is history.
Don't be embarrassed about who you are.
Be proud.
Yeah.
Own it.
Yeah.
And hey, and everybody those are the days where people sent kids didn't talk Kikuyu because
I don't want to.
I don't want
even your name. We used to call them home name. What's your home name? Come on.
The more you sounded like Capital, the better.
Yeah.
So he said, hey, we're not selling a radio station. We're selling your dignity, your identity, your pride.
Uh-huh.
And let's come up with a station that reclaims that.
Okay.
And I remember from day one, when we launched Kameme, it was like wildfire. Well, today, the vernacular sector dominates.
Of course.
Because that need was with every African.
So pent up.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how we got
So that's when I meet you. That's when I met you professionally because 2000, I start my career with a carnival.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come to us and tell us that we need to start doing a night. We used to call it Kameme night.
Yes.
And it was the radio, like you said, once you launched it took off.
Mm-hmm.
And then we came up with this night, Mugithi night, and we said, okay, let's take it there.
And I remember how difficult it was for most places. If Capital, because our target audience couldn't walk into Carnival.
Yes.
Carnival was so upmarket.
It
was like just for the rich.
Yeah.
And our listeners are from Odero.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So we said, no, we, Kameme, your station will take you to the
We'll back you and we'll take you there. You're cool enough.
Pride. You're cool enough.
I remember those nights. And then the effort we put in, we had to go and get Muratina. And we had to go. Fantastic. It was amazing.
I know. Yeah. And you guys played ball. You opened the way we opened the way for Carnival to have all the other nights for their cultural night. But they opened the way for other hotels.
Because ultimately it was a numbers game. It was. And even the first one, we were a bit cautious. We were like, okay, will it? But then it was a runaway success.
Yes.
And that was quite something.
Yeah.
So it grows, and then a lot of fasts. The other day I was listening to Carol Neat Speaker podcast, Carol Musioka's podcast, and Eric was there, Latif, and he was talking about how he came on to work for Kameme because you needed a balance so that you're not all Kikuyu, and I think your news was in English.
But Eric is Kikuyu.
Yes.
Yeah. But we had Kameme, all the company, even Regional Reach, we had Kalenjins in Regional Reach.
Yes.
In Kameme, we had Kalenjins, Luyas. We have always had people from across Kenya.
Agreed. As employees.
But
I'm saying on the content side.
On the content side.
So he came to read English news on Kameme. Because we
had somebody, Joe Lugano, doing Kiswahili news on Kameme.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Because we have always we were accused of being tribal or whatever, but we weren't. Actually, anybody who cared.
Yes.
But people don't like get confused by facts.
Yes.
They don't like facts.
They just will tell the history in whatever way that suits them or suits the narrative they want to perpetuate. So you settle down, Kameme becomes mainstream, but soon, like many things in business, you find yourself not alone. Everyone now, you are the fast mover, and you did get the benefits of being the fast mover. But others start to come. And how is that journey of running Kameme? Yeah.
Well, before I even go to that, I'd like to state, people like to give me credit for Kameme, but the credit doesn't belong to me.
Oh, really? Who does it belong to?
It belongs to the team.
Okay.
Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I always tell people when they say, oh, you did Kameme. I did not do Kameme.
Yes.
The team, the Eric Latifs. Kameme was launched, like Eric said, and everybody, people don't know, people behind the scenes.
Yes.
Wanjiro Kekonyo.
Yes.
Eric Latif.
Yes.
The team that was there. Even Wahu worked at Kameme.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Some of the people who, what the presenters themselves.
Yes.
You know, Gathoni Wamushoba, Sabina, all these guys, Jogua, Joroge, these are the people who build the brand.
Yes.
And I remember Wanjiru coming in because I have no idea about radio. Remember, I've just come from some
Yes,
rural.
and Wanjiru was at Capital.
I was at Capital.
Yeah, yes.
So the first thing I did, I went for a course at Deutsche Welle in Cologne.
Yes, in Germany.
In Germany, to learn about radio.
Sponsored by the Goethe Institute. Okay.
I had no clue what radio was.
Okay.
Remember, I've just come from TV.
Yes.
And this is a field. So I always say people must learn what they don't know. Because when I went for this course, which I mean, I loved, it was in winter.
Yes.
So my memories of Cologne is cold and buying, you know.
Yes.
But because it was sponsored, it was all, you know, once you're in the buildings, they give you allowances and stuff. But you still have to walk long distances after taking the bus, you know, to go to class and go back. Is to learn this new field. Because radio is a field. It's a complete... And that's, as I sat through this course, I realized how much I don't know.
Yes.
You know, you need...
Despite having a very vibrant career.
Yeah.
In media.
In media. You think... So people don't know that. They think, oh, I'm starting... Yes, people come to me and say, I'm starting a radio station and you're doing everything. You don't realize the critical roles.
Yes.
You must have a radio manager, the person who runs, the person with the creative, the person who slots people in the right place, and the importance of voice.
Yes.
They think radio is just anybody with a microphone and talking. Because, you know, you can tell so much about a voice. If I hear a voice, I can tell whether I like the person, whether they are kind, whether they are clever, whether... You can tell everything about a voice. There are morning voices, there are mid-morning voices, there are drive time voices, there are evening voices. I didn't know any of this.
Oh, wow.
When I went to... So even
as morning would be chirpy and, you know...
but not too chirpy.
Yeah, not too much,
Not too much, because when you wake up, and morning must have content. There's supposed to inspire you when you wake up.
Yeah.
When you get up, the last thing you want is to hear this chat, you know? In early morning, that's a mid-morning voice.
Okay.
Mid-morning, you then need... That's why it wasn't by accident that our morning voice was a lady who... First of all, you have to have a brain in the morning because you want to inspire people. You have to be energetic enough.
Yes.
You have to be sultry. I mean, just the right amount. So that was our morning voice. And Wanjiru knew that. She took us through voice. She'd come and say, this is a morning voice with the right content and the right... Because the link has to make sense.
Yes.
Then you get the mid-morning voice, which is now when people are doing their biashara. You need to wake up.
Those ones are now the vibrant guys.
The vibrant guy. So that's when you get... And our mid-morning voice was Gathoni Wamushoba.
Yes.
Who is now a member of parliament.
Of course.
Honorable. Yeah. So you can see her.
Yes.
That's enough to wake anybody up.
Complete mid-morning personality.
Complete mid-morning.
Yeah.
Then we had Joe Lugano at lunchtime, who is informative, telling us about the news.
Yes.
We had... in the drive time, we had PM Squared,
who
was very joking. You know, people who
funny
like to get funny guys.
You don't want too serious stuff.
Exactly,
It's been a long day at the office. It's been a long day. Now I just want to laugh and relax and wind down and get home. Then you have the night voice with Sabina Shege, who's a member of parliament today. Yes.
And Sabina is a sultry, a voice that, if you imagine putting a voice like that in the morning to put you back to sleep.
It won't work, yeah.
So now you're getting into more personal, one-to-one. Just listening to her voice, her velvety voice, her delivery, So each voice has a place. And you have to understand what people are looking for within that time segment. And the voice complements that and delivers that. But today people just say, oh, I like you, you're my brother, come and do my morning show.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So there's a science behind it. And I
like that aspect that you've brought out.
Yeah.
Because it's a very strong aspect, I think, in any investment, entrepreneurial venture, that the studying, you know, filling the gaps that you may have. But first, it has to start with the acknowledgement that you have gaps.
Exactly.
That you don't know it all.
You don't know anything.
Yeah.
You're starting a field, you have to know as much as possible and then get the best people possible.
Yes.
Wanjiru was the best person possible. The team that was there, Eric, these were the best people possible.
Yes.
When we launched K24, again, we went out and got the best people possible. It took us forever to convince Jeff Koinange to come. But I pleaded with him on the phone. He was in South Africa.
Yes.
I pleaded with his wife. Day after day, I'd call and have long conversations. And he told me, Rose, if you convince my wife, I'll fly up, but you have to convince her. And she didn't want to leave South Africa. But you persist, because once you get the right people in place, then
So now that's
They'll get
a good
other.
place to segue into TV.
Yes.
So you started with radio
Started with
because
radio.
all niches had been taken. You found your niche, you conquered it, so to speak. But now you, of course, with budgetary constraints, you're now,
We still
you
had a
couldn't have
TV.
done,
Yeah.
you had the TV license, but you have not utilized it.
Yes.
So
So
how
now
did
we
you
have
then-
established radio.
Yes.
And we think, they say a business had to keep growing. If you stay static, you die. So you want you to grow.
True.
So we have a TV license and we want to grow Kameme. So we have the radio license, the TV, so branch out to TV. Again, we knew nothing about TV.
Yeah.
We know everything.
Same learning curve.
Same learning curve. And then examining the market. Remember, those are the days when you had Citizen, Nation, KTN. We looked at what they offered. And they all did the same thing. They all copied KBC, which was 1 o'clock news in Kiswahili, 7 o'clock news in Kiswahili,
Yes.
9 o'clock news in English.
Yeah.
If you missed the 1 o'clock news, which is when everybody got fired or something,
Yeah. Yes.
you had to wait for 7 o'clock news. If you missed, and then 7 o'clock was Kiswahili, for some reason, you don't do English at 7. And then 9, it's the educated guys.
Yes.
So I remember thinking, well, the first thing we did is I reached out. There was a conference at the Serena Hotel. I think Al Jazeera was just launching, and they had a huge media conference. We had Al Jazeera, BBC, the big international companies were holding, and we attended as media owners. That time I was chairman of media owners.
Yes, association. Yes, yeah.
And one of the people who presented, his name was Ken Tiven, who was the vice president of CNN Technical. And he talked about how technology has evolved. And now the equipment that used to cost thousands of dollars has come down, because with each year, with technology, everything gets smaller and gets cheaper. And now you can launch a TV station with a new software, new equipment for much less, like for $1 million.
True.
So, and that intrigued me. And I thought, hey, if costs have come down, I should get in touch with this guy. Because he had launched stations in Turkey, he had launched CNN in Turkey, he had launched stations in India, and he was talking about how everything, the cost, the way of doing things, robotic cameras have made life easier. You don't have to have people in the studio. So I wrote an email to him because I got his card. And then I just wrote blind. I said, my name is Rose Kimotho, we live in... And I gave him the story of Kameme, and I gave him... And he was intrigued because he had loved Kenya when he came for the conference.
Yeah.
And I started communicating with him, telling him how, we want to get into this market. I described how Nation Standard have this 7, that Kenyan way of copying.
Yeah.
And I want to come up with something
different.
A niche. And he really he says he just loved the concept, because we said, what if we gave people news? Instead of 1 o'clock, we gave them news at 1, 2, 3, 4. What rule is there that you can't have English news at 7? Why can't you have news all the time?
Yes.
And remember, in those days, the news was, in all the stations, was you start off with the president.
What he has been, what he has done.
Followed by the minister.
Yes.
No, the vice president. Then the minister. Then that was the pecking order.
Yes.
Then you had business news, which was a different category. So even if a business person did something that was newsworthy, they never got the top slot.
True.
They had to wait for the business.
For the business segment, after we have covered everything else. We used to live in a difficult time.
And then no news about anybody else. Nobody else was a newsmaker. So we said, why don't we come up with a station where the newsmakers are you and me? The newsmaker is the Askari. Why can't he make news?
Yes.
Why can't we start off our news bulletin with Jogona, who is an Askari at this place?
This happened.
This happened.
Yeah.
People want to know about themselves.
True.
So that was the concept. We said, let's talk about us, stories. Yeah, sure. Let the others cover president, vice president.
Yes. But we are talking about
ordinary
news
people.
of ourselves. Yeah.
Ourselves.
Yeah.
That was the positioning of. And talk about ourselves, news that matters, talking about real people, what we called real people, real news about real people. And it was a niche nobody had. And we said, and we'll tell these stories throughout the day. We don't have to tell them. We'll be like a CNN. We're not bound by the Kenyan
We're
rule.
not going to follow those rules of 7 Kiswahili, 9 English.
We're going to just go crazy and dismantle the whole thing, which is what we did. As soon as we launched it, we started off with ordinary stories. We started off with a story of these guys who cut trees in some forest illegally. Some story that had never...
Random.
And shocked people because it was so interesting, but people are just used to politicians and everything. So, and then we started news. We launched today. I think the next day, Citizen had started doing news several times. Nation also
What?
started now giving news headlines at 4, at 5. Yet before that, it was 1, 7, and 9. They immediately started having different news headlines at different times of the day.
The power of questioning.
So that is the position that we came up, and it caught on. And suddenly, the content of news turned around. Suddenly, a guy in, Karioko was making news. We got stories of a guy who was, doing something ordinary, and something happened to him. It became news. Before that, it was never news.
Wow.
What was news was politicians and big guys.
Yes.
Now, ordinary people began to make news, and that's what it is today. Because people want to read about themselves. They want to know.
Yes.
The only time ordinary people made news in those days is if there was a horrible murder somewhere. And then you didn't even feature the guys.
Mm-hmm.
It was so-and-so, somebody has been murdered somewhere. And that was the section of crime. Remember, it was politician, business news, crime.
Crime desk. The crime desk says so-and-so
But now,
was caught
we make news.
pickpocketing.
Everybody makes news. Ordinary people make news.
Yeah.
And that was the position of K24.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the CNN contact you made,
Yes.
he gave you some guidance?
No, he came with his team. They're the ones who launched K24.
What?
He came here with a team, a fantastic team. When you talk about professionalism,
yes,
you see it. I mean, Jeff Koinange, the work ethic that they have? That's why Jeff Koinange has that work ethic. These people work from morning. None of this African thing of the
until the job is done.
Until the job is done. We flew in somebody from India to come and do the studio lights. Mm-hmm. The guy landed at Kenyatta JKA.
Yeah.
We picked him up. He came straight to the office. All he had asked is we get him an assistant and an electrician.
Okay.
The team was waiting for him in we were in Longonot Place.
Yes.
He went straight to the studio, started working, cutting these big bars, the studio bars for wiring.
Yeah.
1 week, 7 days exactly it took him. The lights, of course, had been shipped. We bought them from India because they were half price of what from the US, somewhere else.
Yes.
He worked we got him a hotel. He'd come in early in the morning, work all day. We'd bring him lunch until evening, go to bed, start again, 7 days. The whole studio lighting grid was done. Left the studio, we got him a driver, went to the airport and flew out.
Wow.
That's how these people work. The team from the US came in. There was a group of journalists. One of them, I think, today works for Al Jazeera. Several of them, they work for international companies now. I see them. They came to train. They call them the visionaries. They said in Kenya, before K24, used to have cameramen who just did camera work. Then you had editors who had little cubicles. So the camera person would take
Yes.
Then the editor would sit. And then there was a writer. And what nonsense. He said, no, teach these kids, first of all, get bright kids.
Mm-hmm.
And to get employed in these other stations, you had to have done journalism or something. The CNN guy said, no, get anybody. A lawyer, Kenmi Jungu came, he did law. Get people who've done medicine, law, any profession.
Yes.
Then teach them how to shoot. Teach them how to edit. Teach them how to script. So one person goes out, shoots, takes, because he's going to edit it. Mm-hmm. So he'll shoot it, knowing he's got a picture in his head.
Yes.
How it's going to be edited.
Yes.
Come back to the computer, because, gone are the days where people, remember the old editing?
Yes.
You're doing everything with
of
software.
Of course, digitally, with software.
Get there, edit your story, and voice it.
Nice.
But you have an editor overseeing, of course, your content. First of all, you are located. You have somebody overseeing the quality and the caliber. And that's what they did. They taught these kids how to shoot, angles. The kids would go out with their cameras, and this team from CNN would go out with them, do stories about people logging trees or Mama Mitumba or whatever, come to the studio. Everybody had to learn how to edit. Even today, all my young people at the office, they know how to edit, they know how to shoot, they know how to script, and then voice it. Wow. So it's complete. So when you look at all the stations today, all their top people were trained by K24.
Wow.
There can be Jungus, Smirithi, the one who was at Nation, all this. And Goiri, they all came from, many of them, or most of them, the top performers came from K24 because they were trained. So the key thing is people. I always say, get the right material. And that's what his name is Ken Tiven. He still writes.
Yes.
He says, you get the right material. It's like anything. You get the fine wood. Then you can carve something out of it.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. They don't have to be trained in journalism. They just have to have a passion for it, for storytelling. After all, what is journalism? It's telling stories.
Yes.
So they want to tell a story. We got people who did agriculture. One of them, I see him now, he's a very successful farmer. He just did stories. Get them, let them know how to tell those stories about the profession they're passionate about.
Excellent.
And you get excellent people.
Wow. So your impact, we should document your impact, Rose. Your impact is even greater than I thought. Okay.
No, it's the people. People matter.
No, excellent, excellent. And you have, I'm even baffled at how far-reaching it is that but you have now Kameme. Kameme has become, you revolutionized, and I think it's fair to use the word revolution because you revolutionized radio by going rural. Everyone's now talking about rural stories. You then come and do the same for TV, change a new way or teach people a new way
of telling stories.
And I think your story speaks to the potential this country has because it's like we have this fertile medium in the people or the caliber of people we have.
It's the people.
And then you feed them the lessons and the teachings and everything, and they thrive.
They take off.
Imagine what that, if done on a national scale, what we'll be talking about.
Yeah.
But now, I want, before we
go to the disaster.
I want to wrap up about Kameme so that we can proceed to the now, where we are.
Okay.
But you're not in Kameme now.
I'm not, because we launched K24. And I remember sitting with this Kent event. The CNN team was still here.
Yeah.
And we had to choose a launch date.
Yes.
Because he says, when you launch, either you can go by like a ship in the night, nobody knows you're there. And how do you launch a news station in a market that has giants? Remember?
Yes. Yes.
You have Nation, you have Standard, you have
Citizen, big boys. Yeah.
Whatever concept you come up with, who is going to watch? Because you're competing with the big guys. So we had to time it. And so we decided, let's time it with the elections, 2007 elections. Because you know how Kenyans are obsessed with politics?
Yes.
If you time it with the elections, and then you are giving news all day, and you are covering your politicians everywhere, because remember, all we are doing is giving news. Other people are running other programs.
Yes.
You'll get viewers. Because suddenly, people don't have to wait until 7. Yeah, they can. So we timed our launch with the 2007 elections.
Okay.
So our launch party was 24th November 2007.
Yes.
Start December 1st. We are out there launching because you need the elections were 30th December. Remember?
Yes.
So we are getting all our bits, making sure the transmitter is working, the signal is going to Limuru. You know, all the ups and downs when you launch it. So I remember when we first launched, the signal wasn't going to Limuru. Eric Latif had to get all our programming onto a disk, drive to Limuru, feed it, because we couldn't figure out. The guys from CNN could not figure out why it's not. Everything was right. You know, our signal, it's going, but we can't reach it. You know what had happened? The coil that was supposed to come to us had gone to Uganda, and we had been given the supplier who had supplied. People did not know that the first 2 weeks, we looked live, but we were not.
You were not live. Eric is driving to...
Every day, I still remember that, he would drive to Limuru as they tried to figure out what the problem was, but they've sorted it out. So come the elections. I remember sitting in my office, the CNN, this Kent even was sitting next to me. We are waiting for the elections to be announced. I remember Jeff Koinange had done 2 stories. One story was Raila Odinga has won the elections, and so we've done his whole background. The other one is Kibaki has been re-elected. So we are waiting, and he kept walking in, you know, Jeff. Which story are we running? Are we running with the Raila or Kibaki? We said, we are waiting for Kivitu, you know, this KICC.
And then it's getting dark.
It's getting dark, you know, the rest of it is history. So what happened? They announced Kibaki. So we said, okay, we are going with the Kibaki story, because you know you have to have both. So we went on air. The next thing, the editor, John Mwendo, comes into my office and says, Rose, there's trouble, there's fire. Our team has been attacked in Kibera. And you know, these are young kids with cameras, brand new cameras, tripods. They had been attacked. The camera has been smashed. Their shoulder is smashed. Some kids all over. There was fire. There was trouble. So our worry, of course, was the safety of our children,
Yes.
our kids.
Yes.
So we said, get them back in, get them back. We didn't know what was happening. There's fire in Kibera, there's fire, I don't know here. So people spent the night in the office that 31st December.
Whoa.
So, of course, fast forward, there was trouble everywhere. We had teams all over covering this chaos in Kibera. And the problem was we had to worry about the tribe of the team. So we'd ask, we hadn't checked that before. We'd ask a kid, are you Kikuyu? What are you? Because if you are, you have to be sent.
You are not building your company based on that. Yeah.
But covering stories, you have to send them for their own safety. Remember, Jeff Koinange went to cover Kiambaa Church. We had to get him a whole security team to go with him. We had to hire cars for him to go and report the story from the site. Remember, he was at Kiambaa Church.
Yes.
So what happened was, here we are covering all this horrible stuff that was happening, the violence. So our costs are going this way because we have to hire security, cars, drivers, the right tribe drivers, but no income.
Because there's no advertising.
No advertising.
There's nothing.
So we start off this station. So we got viewership, but we had no income. So after 6 months, we're operating from an overdraft. Our overdraft was getting deeper and deeper. Our coverage, our costs were getting higher and higher. Our viewership, of course, was high because now we are showing news all day. People are watching who's getting killed, Kofi Annan is in town, all that stuff. So to cut a long story short, I remember the bank coming to me and saying, well, Rose, you're in a hole. You're in a hole.
Show me the money.
Show me the money or get out.
And that's it.
That's it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you build what you learn, what I have learned, because everything has a lesson, is always have a worst case scenario. It never, in my wildest dreams, would I have imagined that 2007 can happen. There was never a worst case scenario in my mind. We said, that entrepreneurs are very optimistic.
Yes.
That's the only way you can keep going. We always think, it's just going to be, but be realistic.
Yeah.
The one lesson I've learned is, today everything may be fine. What if it blows up tomorrow? Even today, every time I wake up every day, I say, I know what happened to me with Kameme after investing all that, after investing in K24 and walking out with nothing. Yes. Nothing, zero.
Yeah.
Had I planned on a worst case scenario, as soon as the fire started burning, I should have shut it down.
Yeah.
But I didn't shut it down because I'm optimistic.
Yes.
Everybody said, Kofi Annan, it's going to be back to normal. We'll have
in no time.
Within no time. So let's borrow some more. Let's get deeper and deeper in the hole. It's going to be, no. Always every day wake up and say, had I cut it off, had I shut it down? Because there was nothing wrong with Kameme. Kameme was doing well. And Kameme, radio has no expense. I mean, there are minimal expenses for radio compared to TV. TV just guzzles because you have cars, you have reporters, you have equipment, it just takes in the money. While Kameme was healthy. And the overheads of our station, microphone, people, it's a people.
Yeah.
So had I shut it down, but you can't stop being optimistic. Even today, here I am being optimistic. I'm always optimistic about
and don't lose that. You're a dreamer.
You're a dreamer. You have to keep saying,
But now, maybe to wrap up, we now see you on YouTube and you are talking about a whole host of things. Maybe you can tell us about this new phase and what you're going through and what you're doing in that space. Yeah.
Okay. Everything evolves.
Yes.
Now there's a new medium. You see, people come to me, and even then people would come to me and tell me, I've got a radio license. I want to run, launch a TV station. You must always evolve with the time. You must change, you must adapt. Today, you don't need to have your own radio license, a radio license or a TV license, because everybody's running a radio station from their house.
Yes.
Everybody's running a TV station from their phone. So you can reach a lot more people. You don't have to go through CCK. That whole new, it's an information age. It's about exchanging information. There's so much in me that I want to give out, share. And the one thing that has always been my passion from Kameme is that the foundation of everything. Every house has a foundation. And for this house to stand, the deeper the foundation, the harder, the stronger the building will be. Roots of a tree. And these are values. Values are what build a nation. Values are what build an economy. People think Japan is ahead because they are what? Oriental or the US or Europe.
It's the values.
It's the values. And those are the foundation of any society. They are the foundation for economic prosperity. If you don't have your basic values, you're not going to grow as a country economically. And it's been proven over time, if we don't want to learn from other nations, look across, look at Rwanda.
Yes.
Completely destroyed 30 years ago, chopping each other's heads off. In 30 years, by reintroducing values back. And we had them. It isn't like as a society we survived, because even as children, people were taught when you're very young how to behave, what is important. We were told stories using animals. The greedy hyena, don't be greedy. He broke into half because he wanted to chase that. He just thought about himself. The hare, the rabbit that thought he's so cool, he can, beat up every tortoise. The value in being persistent, in being focused.
Yes.
And we were taught through animal stories, through moral stories. And then what happened? We threw out the baby with the bathwater. Colonialism comes, we are told, oh, your culture is whatever, you have no values, you have nothing. So we throw all that out and we try to copy the Mzungu, but we just copy what we see. We don't copy the roots.
True.
They come from societies that are built on fundamental, value-driven societies, but we don't have. So today, the guy we admire most is the one who is the thief, the biggest thief.
No values.
Is the one who will invite to sit at the front of the church. I remember when I was a child, my father we were driving to school, and him pointing out at a house on Sigona,
yes.
After Sigona Golf Club,
yes.
On the left. In those days, because there weren't big houses, they're just, but there was this big house out of nowhere with white. And him saying, the man who built that house?
Stole.
He's a thief, he's a stole. And the contempt he had on his face. And I was in primary school, we were going to school. And I remember recoiling at this. That's not something to be admired. He's a thief and he's built that white. But it was a house just standing by itself. And the way he said it, because my father was a very principled, and of course, it's a time where people today say, oh, you were in government for how many years and you didn't come out with us?
Yeah.
You're a fool because you didn't steal. That type of. So once you have a society like that, you cannot prosper. You cannot grow. And that's what I want to talk about.
Wow. Our time is up and I feel like we have just started. This one we definitely have to do another session of.
Yes.
But maybe you can tell us where we can find this etiquette. It's on YouTube, the handle, on TikTok, so that I think you can tell the audience where they can find you so that they can connect and we start.
Yes.
And then I'll definitely have you back to continue this conversation.
Especially
that values piece. Yeah.
What we are telling people is we must rediscover the fundamental values that we were taught when we were young. We knew it. Our parents knew it. Our grandparents. We need to go back to what we learned. And I talk about this on YouTube. I'm on TikTok. The handle is Rose Kimotho at Etiquette. And we are launching an online school of etiquette. So anybody can enroll online from the beginning of March. You can go to Rose Kimotho training at 3stones.tv and enroll for an etiquette course. And we cover basics, basic behavior, down to even dressing.
Yes.
You have seen how young people today dress. Just basic decency. How do you treat people with respect, with dignity? Because every human being deserves dignity. It's not a matter of position. Just because he's an askari or he's a driver, he's a human being. And we start with respect, consideration, and empathy for each other. Then we can build this country to be prosperous.
Excellent.
Yes.
What a fabulous episode. Rose Kimotho, thank you very much for this conversation, which is incomplete, so we have to reschedule. But enjoyed, learnt a lot, and the story of how you built these entities into what are really entities that espouse African excellence is phenomenal. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us in episode 12 of the African Do podcast, and we look forward to having you with us in the future.